Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Deborah Joseph, Editor-in-Chief of Glamour. And with me today, I've got Nicola Mendelsohn, Vice President of Facebook EMEA, and also of Instagram, though I know that's not part of your official title. She is a mother of 4 children. She is, I'm going to read this because there's so many things to say about you, Nicola, even though I know it all, I'm going to have to read it. There's too much going on. So you're the Vice President of Facebook. You've been doing that for 7 years. You previously worked as an ad exec in the ad industry before pivoting to digital. You're also a non-exec director of Diageo, on the board of many charities. And also, for full disclosure, you're also my sister-in-law. I'm married to Nicola's brother, Adam. So also, another part of your life story is that 4 years ago, you were diagnosed with follicular lymphoma, which is an incurable form of blood cancer. And I know we're going to talk about that later on today. But to begin with, I just wanted to ask you, how are you? How's lockdown treating you, and how's work been?
So first off, it's hilarious that you and I are doing this, Deborah. And that we're around, not with each other. It's so strange. I mean, I can't believe it's a year that we've been living like this. Probably nobody on the call can believe it when you actually stop and think what we've gone through. And there was somebody described it to me as it feels like we're all on a corona coaster. You can think that it's going well, and then suddenly you dip again, and different things can happen that can trigger. So I feel very lucky in the fact that, we have a very close family, and we've sort of gone to ground because, they've all shielded with me over the year. And, I'm very grateful for that. And one of the things that I've really tried to focus on, both at work and at home, is to create surprises and moments of joy and things that can be a little bit more unexpected and break the monotony, so that the conversations are not just about what you've watched on Netflix this week. And I think that's kind of stood us in good stead and is helping us to get through. But look, everybody has bad days with this, and some much worse than others. So I'm feeling pretty grateful for how I and my family are at this moment.
I mean, just for context, you've not been able to really leave your house because you're vulnerable and you've been waiting for the vaccine. So it's been particularly difficult for you, because even in the summer, while some of us were going out and eating in restaurants, you weren't able to do that.
No, haven't done that, but I'm hopefully getting the vaccine next week. So I'm very excited that my turn on the queue has come up, and that's because I'm classed as a vulnerable person.
So with your job title, it is so huge. Like, people sometimes contact me and say, I've been locked out of my Instagram. Can you ask your sister-in-law Nicola to help you? And I always kind of slightly giggle, because it feels a bit like asking Richard Branson to help somebody sort out their Wi-Fi problems in their house. Like, you manage so many people, and your job is really extremely big. Can you talk me through a little bit about what it involves on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I love about my job, in fact, all my jobs, is that no 2 days are ever the same. And that is definitely true working for Facebook. And you said at the beginning, it's not just Facebook, it's Instagram, it's WhatsApp, it's Messenger, it's Oculus, it's the whole family portal of apps and services that we have. And yes, you can, whatever you think might happen, something different will happen than what you're expecting. And it does range from, could we help someone, out on fixing, their Facebook page. But then it can also deal with something really important and serious challenges in terms of, some of the things that we've been doing around the pandemic. And we had a big announcement yesterday about the commitment that we have in terms of putting more information out there to help health authorities around the world, the NHS in the UK, about making sure people have accurate information about the vaccine and that are able to connect and understand that better. So and everything in between. So it can involve, in many ways, it's quite like a magazine editor, in that you're dealing with so many different aspects, so much different information, whether it's health or beauty or fashion or celebrities. We have all of that. And then, of course, there's the serious side of it as well. But yeah, I love the fact that no 2 days are the same.
And you're often the spokesperson, especially for women within the business. You do so much to empower women, to help women in business. That's a big part of your job.
Yeah, I certainly do speak in public about Facebook across a whole variety of issues. The issue of empowering women has been something that predates me being at Facebook. That's a passion that I've always had the whole way through my career. And in part because, when I looked up, there weren't that many women above me in the world of advertising. And so it was very difficult to have a relatable role model. And a lot of the women that were there before me really gave up a lot and made a lot of sacrifices. And I guess I promised myself that I wouldn't be that woman, that I wouldn't pull the rungs up behind me, that if I ever got to a position where I could help other people, then that's what I would do. And actually, I've just done it instinctively the whole way through my career. And I think it's never been more important, especially because we see that women in particular are really suffering through the pandemic, whether it's being made redundant, whether it's the sorts of businesses that they have, a lot in the leisure and the hospitality and the service industries. I think about all the beauticians and the manicurists, but also so many of the women running businesses and homeschooling really have been very severely impacted. So it's always been important to me, run a variety of programs, happy to talk about any and all of them since I've been at Facebook.
I mean, I'd like to talk to you about your own personal experience, starting out as a young woman in advertising, it must be over 20 years ago now. And
nearly 30, I can't believe it.
And you really worked your way up the ladder, but also at the same time as doing that, you also had 4 children, which is quite an unusual a career path. I mean, in my case, I was 36 before I had my first kid. So I kind of worked my way up the career ladder and then had my kids, whereas you did it side by side. What was your experience in that? And did you face sexism? Did you face discrimination for being a young mum? How was it for you?
So I had my first child, Gabby, when I was 25. I can't believe that. I look back on that now and, I just think that's pretty extraordinary, especially because she's now 23. So, and coming up for 24. So, but that was the only thing that was ever important to me. If you'd have asked me at a young age what mattered to me is that I wanted to have a family. I'm religious. Judaism is very important to me. The notion of family, community has really been at the heart of everything. And I look back and saw, both my mum and my grandma, who both worked as well, also running, large families and being able to work. So it never occurred to me that you couldn't just do both, which I now realize with hindsight is quite an unusual thing for someone of my age to be able to look to 2 generations above. I don't think that's going to be the same going forwards. But yeah, I had my first child at 25 and lots of people commented on it, thought it was very strange, but not as strange as when I had my second child, when I had Danny. It was like, oh my goodness, is this, becoming a bit of a habit? And then by the third, I literally remember one of my bosses saying to me, what's going on? Is this, are you planning on any more of these? Like, it was such an anathema because nobody had ever come back to work after having 1 baby, never mind 2 or 3 at the company that I was at the time. So they didn't have policies in place. The maternity policies were not there. So many things that we might take for granted were not there in those early days. And yeah, I think I was at different times perhaps overlooked in different ways for things, but also what I consciously chose as well. I was very clear about that whatever I wanted to do had to work for me, but also had to work for my family, and I also had to work for the business as well. I really thought it had to be fair. And so at that time, I didn't think that I would be able to achieve in those buckets if I was doing a 5-day full-time job. And so I purposely went and asked if I could do 4 days. And they thought I was a bit mad because nobody had ever done 4 days. But they agreed to it. And, I'm grateful to them. I really am. Bartle, Bogle and Hegarty, John Bartle, Nigel Bogle and John Hegarty. Because it was pretty pioneering back then to agree to do something like that. But they did. And I was able to do that. And I wanted to do that for 16 years till my children got bigger.
I mean, you were really lucky because I hear so many horrific stories of women not even feeling comfortable putting photographs of their kids up because they had to hide it. So you were incredibly lucky and you worked hard for it. You've always worked very, very hard. I wanted to talk to you about your pivot when you went. So you worked your way up in the ad industry and you had a really big name. You were already established as a very successful career woman. And then you called me up and said, I think I've been headhunted by Facebook. And at the time, Facebook was big, but it was certainly nothing like it was today. Talk me through, I think there was 200 people or something in the UK at the time when you joined 7 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. It's about 8 years ago that they came and approached me. And yeah, Facebook in the UK at that time was less than a couple of hundred people. It did have big reach around the world. There was probably just shy of 1 billion people at about that time that were using it. So it was large. But the business side of it was really in its fledgling early days. And at the time, I had become the first woman president of the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising. It's a 2-year role that you take on top of your day job, where I was running an ad agency. And my whole mission there had been about being digital, that the UK ad industry, media industry, needed to be much more digital, much more focused around that. And I think that's what attracted Facebook to kind of come and have a conversation with me. You know, it moved slow, and then it moved very slow, and then it moved very fast. And then, you know, suddenly a few months later, there I was taking on this role across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Very small, and we've seen extraordinary changes and growth in those 8 years.
How many people do you oversee now?
So in the company now across Europe, Middle East, and Africa has about 10,000 people. So, and London's grown from, you know, those 200 people to about 4,000 people now. And in, you know, those days it was very much just a business office. Now we have engineering in London, and London is our largest engineering hub outside of America. So it's really gone through some changes in that time.
What are the main changes? But not just in terms of what Facebook offers, because I think we all know how Facebook has changed, but also just from a cultural perspective in a business. What are the cultures that change in that time? Yeah, so you're right, the product has changed, and it's changed hugely in that time. In the early days, it was Facebook, and we had just acquired Instagram. And as I said, we're this whole family of apps and services, and, you know, now have things like Oculus. I don't know how many people have tried Oculus, but it is so much fun. Deborah's not very good on it. It makes her feel a bit nauseous, but that's more you, Deborah. that's more you. I went into claustrophobic, not nauseous, because you suffer from claustrophobia. But if you haven't tried it, honestly, it's the most extraordinary experience. And you can start to imagine, you know, how people might be able to work in those spaces. Never mind just playing the games, which our children together very much enjoy. From a cultural perspective, so much of it still remains the same, because the principles and the mission around which Mark Zuckerberg created the business all those years, 17 years ago, are very much still at the forefront. And the values that we live by are very much the same. So about being open, about focusing on impact, about being bold. But of course, it's changed when you've gone from a very small company where so many people knew each other and knew each other very well to a much bigger company. But the culture very much comes through, and that openness and transparency has remained. And Mark has, in the whole time I've been at the company, does a weekly Q&A where you can literally ask him anything. I find it extraordinary that he gives an hour every week and, you know, talks about what's going on in the week, what's going on with the different products, the different services, the challenges, and then people can ask him anything, and God bless him, he does answer them. People challenge him, really ask him. Very much. It's a very this is a challenging culture, and I think that's a good thing. And it's a good thing to create an environment where you can speak truth, whereby people feel confident that their voice will be heard and understood, which I think really matters and is really important. And ultimately, as a tech company, we're in the business of innovation. And innovation is not great if everyone just nods their heads the whole time. You want challenge, you want discussion, you want debate. And that's very much fostered into the culture. Now, you know, for any leaders of people at the moment, how you maintain a culture through a screen, that's not without its challenges, that's for sure. And I think all of us are grappling with how you do that, especially as this period that we're living through looks like it's going to go on for some time yet. I can't leave, a chat with all these editors and journalists out there and not ask you, what about the conversation around fake news and Facebook? How are you addressing that? It's such a massive issue. It's something that we address, that you're addressing, but what's your view on that? Yeah, happy to take that. And this is something that, we take incredibly seriously, because, look, we don't want fake news, misinformation on our platforms, and people don't want it on our platform. So we've been very clear about setting out what the guidelines are as to how we should deal, not just with this issue, but so many other issues as well. So it starts by the fact that we actually have a rule book, if you like, a set of community guidelines. They're open, anybody can have a look at them and understand them. And they're detailed. They're really detailed, and they cover so many different aspects. And we take deep consultation on the creation of the rules that are in there and the guidelines. So that's where we start. From there, where do we go?
Well, we're also very clear that we don't want anything on the platform that could cause real world harm. And if there was ever anything on there that would endanger human life in any way, we don't want it on our platform. We will take it down. And actually, we can actually now, through the investments that we've made on machine learning and especially on artificial intelligence.
Talk me through, how does the machine learning work? I'm always interested when you tell me those stories. Like, how do you actually tackle fake news? Like, in reality, is it roomfuls of people tackling fake news? How does it work?
Well, it starts with the principles, and that's why I sort of took the time to explain that the principles are in there, because then you use a big expression like that, but it can mean so many different things in different areas. And so whether it's something that's related to race or whether it's something that's related to the pandemic, there's different guidelines and then different rules that will be on there. So for anything where it's real world harm, there might be key phrases that you can literally train the machines to look for and understand the context, and then we can take it down. Or if we see something that's going viral very, very quickly, that's when a person might have a look in, because we have over 35,000 people around the world that are looking at the content and looking at escalations. Because we also rely on people. Your people will report things as well. And if you suddenly see a load of things being reported that is the same, has the same fingerprint on it, then that might get pushed up quicker.
Right.
So once we have that, then, as I say, the machines can often take things down before it's even hit somebody's Facebook or Instagram, because it's able to see and detect what it is and get it down. Now, there are those things that are in there that people might have very different opinions on, where they might not cause real world harm, but they are not based on truth. And we want to allow it to be a place where people can have freedom of expression. So in those instances, what we might then do is label it as misinformation. And if we label something as misinformation, we see that people aren't that interested in then going on to click through. And actually, it reduces the distribution by about 95% as well. So that's how you can start to see how you can get it off, is another thing. And then the final area is that, and we've largely resolved this, a lot of the stuff in the earlier years was, what you'd call clickbaiting. And it was financially driven by those companies to want you to go in and go, oh my goodness, I didn't know, I need to go and see. And I think we've all been guilty of clicking through on those sorts of things.
Once for a clickbaity headline that I think we hadn't mentioned in the headline what the product was. So it was a claim about a product without mentioning what the product was. So you had to click to see what it was, and we got penalised for it. So I'm sure there's a lot of journalists out there who have experienced that. So I guess it's also part of the learning.
Yeah, it's part of the learning. And once we saw that, we could see almost in the background what was really happening. We just banned those people from the platform, because that's, we absolutely don't want Facebook to be a place, or Instagram to be a place where, those things are dominating, because nobody wants that. So we take that down.
I mean, it's a big fight, though. It's an ongoing fight. I can't see this being resolved overnight even with the best machine learning in the world. It's a long fight, misinformation.
Absolutely, it is. And we've committed that we'll publish quarterly how we're doing across not just this topic, but some other topics as well, like terrorism, like hate speech. And we publish quarterly our community guidelines. And we have another one coming out in the next few days, in the next week. So people can see how we're doing and how we're tracking against that. And the good news is that, what we've been seeing in the last report that we did, that across all the measures, in part because of the investments, and these investments are billions of dollars, that we are getting better at taking down, as I said, often proactively before it even gets flagged, but also that we're seeing the prevalence go down as well. And on some of the areas, it's single digits in the 10,000s of content that people might see. And that number was important for people to understand as well. So it's a big topic there, Deborah, you threw at me.
An interesting one that I've got a lot of views on, but I don't think now's the time. It's a much, much bigger conversation. But I did want to ask you, as publishers and as journalists, how can we best work with Facebook and with Instagram? What can you give us some tips, some advice on how we can best benefit? Obviously, at Glamour, we drive a lot of traffic from Facebook from our articles, but what other ways could we be working with you? What learnings can you share out there?
Yeah. So there's lots is the answer. And I was really pleased and proud that just a couple of weeks ago now, that we launched Facebook News in the UK. It's the second country outside of the US. And this is basically a dedicated place in the Facebook app that can have news from national, local, and lifestyle outlets. And it really puts original journalism right in the front of new audiences, but also, crucially, provides publishers with more advertising and subscription opportunities. And this, for us, is the first and really the beginning of a series of investments that we're going to be making in this space. And we've seen a really wide take-up from across the UK publishing industry. So everything from, the Daily Mail, Channel 4, The Guardian, Financial Times, but also, Deborah, Glamour, Vogue, GQ, Cosmopolitan as well. So I'm really excited for that to get going. And I think that, there's so much more that we can be doing together. But this is a really important, big step that we're taking. And I'm happy the UK is one of the first countries as well.
I think there might be some freelancers out there as well. I know Facebook do an awful lot helping journalists pivot to a more digital workspace. Can you give any tips or advice for individuals, not just bigger publishers?
Yeah. So yes, there's a lot that we do in this area as well, and we do run trainings as well for people that are looking to put their own self-publish and to go out there. And maybe we could see if we could do a session together with the BSME. I think we might have done that in the past, but maybe that's something that we could pick up on and do together again in the future if people want it.
Well, I want to ask you also, there is going to be a Q&A at the end of this. So if you've got any questions for Nicola, please put them in the chat and I will ask her them at the end of this. I wanted to move on to the more personal side of your life and your cancer diagnosis. So one day that will always stick in my mind personally is it was a weekend and you came around and told me and Adam that you'd been diagnosed with follicular lymphoma. We didn't know what it was. You didn't know what it was. I'd never even heard of the cancer. I'd heard of leukemia. I didn't know anything else about other blood cancers. Can you just talk me through what happened and where you are 4 years on with that?
Yeah. Can't believe it's 4 years. I don't know where the time's gone, nor the journey that I guess I and my family have been on in that time. Definitely, that was the worst. It was the worst period of my life, without question. Absolutely, without question. And here's the thing with a cancer diagnosis, and I'm sure people on the call know people. Doesn't happen on one day. It's pretty unusual. It sort of happens over a few days where you start to realize that the thing that you thought you had or the life that you had before might not necessarily be the life that you were going to have hereafter. And mine was particularly unusual in that I wasn't ill in any way whatsoever. I just was busy, was jumping on planes. Remember when we used to do that? Back right and all over the place. And my only symptom was a very small lump in my groin area. And as a woman, I'd always been told to check my boobs for lumps, but not actually weirdly anywhere else, which in hindsight seems quite ridiculous that we don't just go, that lump's you just have a little check everywhere else. But we're not taught that. And I so wasn't worried about it. But I happened to have a good friend of mine who's a GP, and I mentioned it to her. And she said, well, if it hasn't gone in, you said, you can get lumps and bumps. She said, but if it hasn't gone in 2-3 weeks' time, I'll have a look at it for you. And she did. And I'll never forget her looking at my face. And because I know her so well, as soon as she put her hands on me, I could see that she wasn't, the poker face sort of went up. And I remember saying to her, you're not happy, are you? And she went, no. She said, I don't know what it is, but I know I'm not. I want to get this checked out and quickly. And then fast forward, for something like a blood cancer, it can often take 2 to 3 years to get diagnosed because you get fobbed off, especially if you're a woman, with it could be this, that, the other. So symptoms of a blood cancer can be that you get very tired, that you have night sweats, that you might have these sort of lingering illnesses like coughs and things that just take a long time to go. And then, of course, the lumps. And the only thing I had was one lump. When I went for my eventual scan, which took place basically, I got the initial diagnosis that it was something not great. And then when I had to scan, I had a weekend in between, which was just hell. It was absolutely hell of a weekend. Didn't sleep, lost weight. I lost 1/2 stone in worrying in that one weekend. And then when they basically did that scan, it showed that I had tumors everywhere all up my insides, like all through my chest, which was a huge shock. And then it was the understanding, first of all, I didn't know what it was, never heard of it, didn't know anyone with it. What do you do? And it wasn't, everything that I'd ever heard about cancer was about breast cancer or prostate cancers, where you treat it and you cut it out and, you win or you die. That's what you're told. But with a blood cancer, because it's incurable, there's actually, for my cancer, there was no benefit in treating it immediately. And actually, there's every incentive to not treating it if you're well, because new drugs could come out and sometimes they can go up and down and shrink and go bigger at different times. So they do this thing called watch and wait, or as patients think of it as watch and worry, because now all you do is sit there thinking, I've got this cancer, and you think about it every single day, all the time. And after about 18 months, I needed to have the treatment because it was growing around my kidneys and it was going to give me kidney failure. So I had chemotherapy and immunotherapy, which I'm really happy to say was successful, and it reduced it right down to a microscopic level. My treatment had to stop early because of COVID. I was supposed to carry on the treatment all the way for 2 years, but it had to stop in March. And so I haven't been treated since March last year. And I can't pick up that treatment either, because it's a cumulative treatment, not that you can pick it back up.
For all cancer patients, it's been horrific.
It really has. It really has. And, we're going to see it in the numbers in the deaths, unfortunately. And there's a real reticence for people with mild symptoms or symptoms at the moment to come forward. And they need to. They really need to. You need to prioritize your health. But for me, the doctors said that, the risk of me catching COVID was greater than the benefits that my treatment would give me. And so it has been borne out in the data that people with blood cancers really have, really do badly with COVID.
I mean, sorry, it still gets me even 4 years later. But the incredible thing about it was, you've always been the strongest person I have ever met in my life, in the sense that your resilience and also your positive mind. And I'm sure that's why you've done so unbelievably well in your life, is because you are so positively minded. And when I've had health issues, like I had years of infertility and years of IVF, which you held my hand throughout the whole thing, you were always so positive towards it. And as much as I appreciated every minute, I remember thinking, well, of course it's easy for you to be positive because you're not in my situation. And then you got diagnosed with cancer and you were the most positive person I've ever met. And I was like, this isn't about anybody else. This is just Nicola faced with this situation. Where does that come from? Where does that resilience and that positivity come from? And can you share it? Because we all need a little bit of it.
I don't. Well, first, thank you, Deborah. But I think I am a natural optimist. And I also like to be in control of the things that I can be in control of. And I think I learned a long time ago, I don't know why or how, that so much of time is spent worrying about the things that might never happen or that are beyond your control. And we all do it, don't we? And I did it that first weekend with my cancer diagnosis, that you're not actually thinking about the diagnosis. I'd gone straight forward to that I was going to die, that my John was going to marry a wicked stepmother, my children were going to be brought up by a witch, and they were all going to have miserable lives, and the generations that came, everything was going to be a disaster. And of course, that's just the spiral that gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And I remember waking up on that Monday morning and just going, I can't do this. This is not me. And I'm like, I went and got my hair, and I did my makeup nicely to go for my scan. I must be mad. But actually, it was important. It was like putting on an armor to kind of go, I can go and do this, and I can face this, and I will take on what comes to me today, and I will deal with what happens today. I can't manage what might happen in 10 or 20 years' time, but I know what I can focus on today. And that's how I think about it. What's in my control? What can I make a difference on? And not to worry about the things that I can't control at this time. Now, you can place your bets in order to create better luck. The old adage of you're not lucky, you just work hard to get lucky. I really believe in that mantra. I do. And that stacking things in certain ways to make sure that you take stress out of your life, I think that matters. I think the other thing that matters, and I think one of the things that's really challenged us, and I touched on it in the beginning through this period, is that we've lost what our normal things were to be hopeful for, or the things that we look forward to and that we plan. That's been taken away from us. And that is true. It has so much. But there's equally so much that we can do with our own creativity and our own imaginations and the own resources that we have. because we are lucky people. The fact that we're all on a Zoom call having a conversation today means we're already in the lucky group. Yeah. Now, people on the call might not be feeling that. They might be going, but you don't understand. And it's true. Homeschooling kids is a nightmare. Looking after people that are sick is horrendous. Not being out, living alone is terrible. It is true. But there are things that we can do. And the whole way through the year, I have worked with the family, well, you know this, Deborah, just to create little moments of joy. It might be just giving everyone a chocolate bar that they weren't expecting. It might be, well, we've done murder mystery evenings where we've dressed up as a family and just had fun and planned it and looked forward to it and, you know, and done silly things together. And we're going to be doing it. So my next one is we're going to be doing Valentine's Day. And, you know, there's 5 of us in the house. I've got a 16-year-old boy who's tearing his hair out. He's definitely not going to be getting with any of his mates or any of the things that you would normally be doing as a 16-year-old boy. So we're going to have a red party. I'm going to red theme the food and we'll have a bit of fun with it. Just creating those moments that you can just create a bit of excitement and energy. I think that's the thing that I hold at the front of what I do.
I mean, you do that in everything. You plan your life at the beginning of the year and decide, you know, what you're going to do. I just wanted to ask, while we're on here, with all these journalists on here, when you got the cancer, instead of feeling sorry for yourself, your response was, I'm going to find a cure. I mean, who thinks that, Nicola? Who gets cancer and thinks, I'm going to find a cure? And that's what you're doing. You've set up your own charity. You're raising millions of pounds for research into your cancer that hasn't had the funding previously. What can we do? I'm asking you all out there, what can we do to help you to raise awareness, raise money, and try and find a cure for your cancer?
Thanks, Deborah. I'm going to have you as my agent going forward. So yes, I should have talked about this, and this is terrible, but it just occurred to me, like in 2016, when I was diagnosed, we've put man on the moon, we've got the internet, you know, we've seen on the Facebook platforms, 3 billion people being connected. We've cracked the code of DNA, and how can we not have a cure for cancers? And so what became very clear to me was that this was a cancer nobody had heard of, had very little funding going into it. And I just thought it was unacceptable. And as I spoke to more and more doctors, but initially about my own diagnosis to understand it better, they all sort of looked down at me and go, yeah, well, we've not really had that as a focus area and the money's gone in X, Y, and Z. And so I thought if I could use the platform that I have, the connections that I have to bring people together to corral different, you know, thinkers, new thinkers around the problem, using data, using technology, then I have to believe we would find a cure. And the scientists agree with me. The researchers agree with me. And here's the thing about this cancer, that if we cure follicular lymphoma, which is a slow growing cancer of the, you know, the B cells, basically, of the blood, then we will be able to also, because of the genetic mutations that it has, also impact on 73 other cancers, including the incurable parts of breast cancer and prostate cancer, which share the same genetic mutations. So to anybody out there, I would love to work with you to raise awareness of it. And if you know people in your networks that maybe have follicular lymphoma, we have a group on Facebook that has 7,500 people. It's the largest gathering of people that have ever come together around follicular lymphoma. And we are going to find a cure. And I'd love you all to come together and to be part of that journey with me. That'd be amazing.
So please let us know if you can help at all. And that's from me, not from Nicola. She hasn't asked me to say this, but I can't resist. We haven't got much longer, but I've got a few questions from people. I'm just going to run through them. Okay. This is an interesting one. This is from Madalena Brederode. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Her question is, with the rise and predominance of cancel culture in social media, what is your strategy for filtering and controlling hateful comments on Facebook and Instagram?
So thank you for the question, Madalena. Actually, it speaks to a lot of the work that, you know, I talked about earlier, and also about some of the tools. So one that we've created. So on Instagram in particular, we created some tools around bullying. And we really listened and worked closely with children's charities, children's experts around this area. And look, bullying is not a new thing in the social media age. We all had experiences at school where there was bullies or one was bullied or etc. So it's something that's always been with us, but it does evolve in different times. And so we actually have, there's prompts that come up which actually say things like, looks like you're about to post something that's not very nice. Are you sure you want to do that? Is something that we have. The other thing that we have, and we started particularly with children that we thought was important, is that sometimes you don't want to block the bully because that could be almost used against you. And so what we did was that you could block comments, you could block that person from your feed without them knowing. So there's a number of different things that we've done in this area, but hate speech of any type is something that we take very, very seriously. And we have a whole number of things that we do in this area.
How can people find out a bit more about it? Where can they find that information?
We can, it's on Facebook on our news posts, but also we can always share more with the BSME as well. Very happy to do that.
Great, actually. And also, if you could share also any links and stuff to help. We were talking about earlier about how people can pivot and use social media better for their career. I'd love any links around that.
I'm very happy to do that. So, we have a whole Facebook journalism website. So there's tons of resources in there, and there's online courses as well. And that can help you find audiences, monetize, measure. So much. So I'm very happy to follow up and share some of those resources after as well.
Really good questions. I'm going to run through them. What's the future of publishing in your opinion? What are your predictions?
God, I'm definitely not one to be in the predictions game. Why would I? If I
years ago to move into digital, you said to me, go and move into digital publishing. It was a great prediction. It really helped restart my career. So you're not that bad at predictions.
So I think but I think that's it. We're living in a digital age where people expect to be able to consume information in lots of different ways now. You see those videos of 2 and 3 year olds where they see any surface and they just start to swipe it because they assume that that's what you can do. That's the future consumer. So I would always want to be in a place where consumers are going to be. And that doesn't mean the end of one thing. It just means the evolution of. We always like to think in terms of black, white, it has to be X or Y. Often things coexist together. And it's about the creation of different revenue streams and different models. That's the part that, is being worked through at the moment.
This is from Laura Rowe. How do you see the e-commerce playing out in the future of Facebook and Instagram?
So e-commerce is really important from us, from a Facebook perspective. And the reason being is that it's really important for the businesses that use our platform. So we have nearly 200 million small businesses around the world that are using our platform. Majority are using tools for free. And what you've seen, especially over the last year, we've done a really big pivot into this area around commerce in order to help small businesses. Think about your own high streets. All of those have had to close in the pandemic, but so many of those shops found ways to be able to sell their products in different ways, and often through Facebook and Instagram. So we've created shops where people can actually, go out, that those small business owners can actually put their products on Facebook. And we feel like we've created the shop for them and made it as easy as possible. But it's an important area for us because almost to the previous question, how people buy and sell now is moving more and more online. So we want to be able to help facilitate that, both for the businesses, but also for the user to make it as easy as possible and as frictionless as possible for people to be able to do that.
I'm going to end on a personal question from Hattie Brett, and it's something, Hattie, that Nicola and I have discussed a lot in the past. As a mum of 2 young kids, now totally glued to screens in a new way with homeschooling, I'm interested in what advice you're giving your kids, what you gave your kids, because your kids are older now. Your youngest is just in 16. What advice you've given to your kids growing up about social media use, and as someone who works in tech, and when were they allowed Instagram and Facebook accounts?
Yeah, so really, thank you, Hattie, for the question. I'm really clear about this. Our platforms have rules, which is you have to be 13 to be on them. And we've worked really hard to make sure that is the ages that people come on. So that's the age my kids came on. I gave them their phones at 11 when they went to big school, and then they were 13 when they went on the platforms. I think the issue of, screen time is one of the most stressful things for all parents, myself included. I think often we all feel like we're losing a battle on a daily basis, and especially through the pandemic. I had really clear rules about the phones not being in the bedrooms at night. I thought that was really important, and all the devices got more and more over the years as more platforms got evolved. But everything kind of got put into a central charging station in the hall, and I think that was really a good discipline. And the reintroduction of old-fashioned alarm clocks by people's beds, because otherwise that whole creeping thing of let's just use the iPhone or the phone as the alarm clock is a slippery slope to you walk in at midnight and suddenly they're still on the games and all the rest of it. So I can't say my kids were perfect, nor would I want them to be. But the thing I am grateful for is that we do have the platforms at this time for the kids to be able to communicate with each other, because I just think how much harder it would have been for them. And I am grateful for the teachers and the Zoom lessons and the Teams lessons, because honestly, I don't know what any of us would have done without that, as difficult and as challenging as it is. So the thing I care about most, honestly, more than anything, is that they feel confident and happy at this moment, because there's so much being thrown at them. That's the thing that I pivot on, but make sure they get some sleep and don't stay under the covers all night doing this. It's not good.
Quite strict about that.
I was really strict about it. And I think it's right. I think it's the right thing to be.
Taking and your own personal life as well. You don't take your phone to bed with you. You do have a separation between technology and personal life, and also being Jewish and you're being religious.
Yeah, we don't. So we don't use the tech on the Sabbath, which again is just really nice to have that detox as well. So it might seem weird, the person from Facebook and Instagram saying, switch it off. But I think, like everything, too much of anything is not a good thing. But I think everything in moderation.
Actually, that leads me to another question here. Someone's asked, as a Jewish woman, have you ever struggled with being Jewish? Has it ever held you back, or have you been treated or looked at differently at work, and how have you overcome this?
Gosh, big question. I have to assume I was treated differently, and yes, I have to believe that. I used to go home Fridays when I go home when we used to go to work Friday afternoons, not going in. Seems so weird, doesn't it, going into the office? And very early in my career, when I first got my job, I realized that it was going to be different, because I got the job and then I said, by the way, I'm religious and I need to take Fridays off. The Jewish Sabbath comes in accordance with sunset on a Friday and goes out with sunrise, sunset at the weekend. So on the Saturday night. And I actually had to come in age 20 back down to London to explain all what it was. And they'd never heard of anybody want to do something like that. So I've always been true to myself, to the things that I believe in that matter to me. And actually, on the whole, I don't think it's held me back in any way whatsoever. I think if you're honest about it and open and share, people respect you and actually want to learn from you and understand, what's going on. So I kind of weave it into my life. It is just me. It is who I am.
Very last question, so we've really got to end now. What strategies do you have for coping with the stress of high-level decision-making and avoid? Well, we've kind of gone about positivity, but do you have a career action plan when things become very, very stressful? Is there something you do?
I think I'm a great listener. So I like to make sure that I take in all the different points of view. And then once I've evaluated, I do trust my gut. And I think over the years, I've got a lot better at trusting my gut, making a decision and then moving on. I think when you prevaricate over things like I think, done is better than perfect is one of our sayings at Facebook. And just to make sure that you keep moving and keep making decisions, I think often you'll not get them all right. And that's okay. You are allowed to fail as long as you learn from those mistakes that you've made and then go forwards. But if you get yourself into a habit of making clear decisions, taking people on the journey and are able to explain why you made that decision, then often it's all right. And you know what? I came back stronger from my maternity leaves each time, because I had a different perspective on what mattered and what was important. And sometimes I used to sweat the details on things that I shouldn't have. And I would have been better for myself and the people around me if I had empowered them to make more of the decisions and really only come to me with the bigger stuff where they really got stuck. So that's kind of how I think about it.
I'm glad to hear you sweat the small stuff. I never see you sweat the small stuff. So it's interesting to know that you did used to do that and you've learned it as time's gone on.
I still do. The small stuff really, really matters. It really does. But what matters even more is empowering the people around you to make the decisions and for them to feel that they're growing, they're learning and developing. But every now and then you absolutely have to go in and do a deep dive to really understand why things are as they are and why they might be going wrong.
Oh, I didn't mean professionally. I mean just in your head.
Oh, God, yeah. Totally. And I still do. I mean, I'm talking in generalization, but yeah, of course I do.
Yeah. People keep asking me, what's the name of your Facebook journalism website?
I think it is just called Facebook Journalism Project. I think it's called.
Someone's thing. Right, well, we've come to the end of our time. That's 48 minutes. It's gone so quickly. It's lovely to speak to you. I'm going to pop round and see you later as well and stand at your doorstep. Thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to remind everybody to join us tomorrow night for the BSME Awards. please join if you haven't already. And Nicola, big love to you. Total inspiration. Even though I know you well, you inspire me every single day of my life. And I hope everyone there has found some inspiration for this as well. Take care. Lots of love. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Deborah. Thank you for all your questions as well. I really appreciate it. And good luck in the awards, everyone. Good luck.
Everyone's saying thank you. Bye.